Hello and welcome. We're going to dig in here in just a moment. We're going to let some people go ahead and filter in, give some people time to join the webinar. Today's topic, guaranteed 10DLC A2P campaign approvals, understanding and mastering the approval process. So like I said, we'll give some people time to go ahead and filter in. Already seeing some guests. Hope you guys are having an absolutely amazing day today. Today's Thursday, so we're getting very, very close at the time of the recording this to going into the weekend. A lot of exciting things going on. A very busy week in the messaging space, and we've seen some movement. We've seen some changes as it relates to the 10DLC approval process, and we're going to be digging into all of those nuances today on this webinar. So like I said, we're going to let people filter in here, and then we'll go ahead and get started here in a moment. So while people are filtering in, I'll go ahead and introduce myself and a little bit about my company and why we are doing these webinars. So my name is Will Craig. I am a co-founder of the messaging provider, messaging aggregator called Signal House. So my background is in CRM, spent several years working in a vertical CRM system where messaging was really at the center of the universe of what we do. And so we in this venture are making sure that you as a CRM system are able to provide messaging for your customers. So we specialize in connectivity for CRMs. These are either CRMs that resell connectivity to their own customers or CRM systems that have a third-party marketplace where we build the best application on that marketplace. However, that's not the only people that we can service. We can send a message from any application to any person. So that's A2P messaging. So any company that sends a message to a customer, we can power that. But today in particular, and we'll go ahead and dig into today's headline topic, we're going to be talking about the 10 DLC approval process. And so in past webinars, we dug into what is 10DLC, what is A2P, what does all of this mean? I'll give a super high level overview, and then we will go ahead and dig in deeper. So the first thing is an overview of the 10DLC approval process. We can't start that without defining 10DLC A2P. So 10DLC, 10-digit long code. These are the phone numbers that you are all used to, having the 3 digits that is a local area code. So for myself, from Central Illinois, 217 is our area code. It's going to be like that throughout the entire United States. So that's 10DLC, essentially what that is. A2P, we've already described this, application to person, sending a message from any kind of application to a human being. And then you do it the reverse, a person sending a message to an application, that's P to A. It's all within this sort of construct of A2P traffic. So as we dig into this approval process, I think it's really important to set the stage. And so 10DLC is unique among the different types of messaging. And so different types, I mean, short code, toll free, RCS, WhatsApp, a lot of these different platforms. The reason why 10DLC is unique is because there is a specific organization that handles the 10DLC registration process, or essentially the review process that a company has to go through before they're able to actually send an A2P message. This company is called the Campaign Registry, or TCR. So when you are going through 10DLC registration and you are submitting a brand and a campaign, which we will definitely cover in depthly, this is all done through TCR, or the campaign registry. So what is a brand? What is a campaign? Who is reviewing what? And how does that review take place? So a brand, which is the first step of your 10DLC approval process, I guess I should specify 10DLC approval process is a two-step process. The first step is approving the brand and reviewing it. The second step is reviewing the campaign and approving it. So on the brand approval side of things, essentially you can think of a 10DLC brand as the company, the brand as the company that is sending the messages to the individual. So for example, my company Signal House, we have a brand that is Signal House. We are registering our company to be able to send out messages to an individual. So during this brand approval process, you're going to be asked a series of questions that essentially just verifies that you are who you say you are and you are able to act on behalf of the company with which you are registering for traffic. So they're going to ask you questions like your legal company name, a DBA if one is present. So if you are a child company of a larger organization or a parent company, they're going to ask for your tax ID, which is your EIN. They will ask for your address, the type of organization you are, so an LLC versus a sole proprietorship versus government agency, all of those different types of things, as well as whether, again, you're private, public, government, NGO, whatever the case may be. So they're going to be asking all those individual questions about what your business is and what type of business it is. So once you input that information and you click submit, that review process for the brand is essentially instant. So it's going to take a couple of minutes, but you can essentially think of it as instant. What they are doing is they are sending the information that you have submitted and they are comparing it to a government database. So essentially an IRS database that has your company information. So long as the type of organization, which again, LLC, private company, so long as that lines up with your company legal name and the EIN or tax ID, this will be approved. An approval for a brand is called the brand being verified. So you'll get a status that says this brand is verified. That's a quick process. It's relatively straightforward and seamless. The number one questions that I get when people are submitting a brand is essentially, how do I find my EIN? And so that's a really good question. How do I find my EIN? To find your EIN, there's really a couple different things that you can do. If you're a business owner, this will be on your SS4 or your W9. It's a 2-digit number with a dash followed by an additional 7 characters. So it's 9 digits in total. So you'll see it on your W9 or your SS4. You can also just call the IRS or look on the IRS website. So if you contact them, verify your information, they'll be able to provide it for you. The third and final way, if you're just an employee at a larger organization and you have an HR function within your organization, ask HR. Ask HR, ask accounting. They will have that information for you. And while it's important to keep your tax ID, like, you don't want to give it out to everyone. It's not the same as an SSN. You do need this to verify your business information. So it is important that you do give it for this use case. Also, if you're an employee and you're like, my accounting department told me they didn't have it or didn't want to give it to me or anything else, it is also on your W2. So essentially 3 different places you can find your EIN: W2, contacting the IRS directly, or on your W9 or SS4, so the tax filing documents. And so before we really dig into the rest of kind of what we want to talk about here today, I actually want to share my screen and I want to walk you through the brand submission process. Because hearing me talk about it is one thing, but actually seeing it is so much better. And also, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. We're going to be doing a very in-depth Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Okay, so I'm logged into my CSP account on TCR. So those are 2 acronyms. Let's define both of them. TCR, the campaign registry, they oversee the brand and campaign approval process for the 10DLC registration process. CSP, campaign service provider. I and my company are a campaign service provider. You might be a campaign service provider. There are some aggregators or messaging providers in the space that require you to be a campaign service provider. If you want to learn more about that, our first webinar actually really digs in deep into, do you own your campaigns? What is the difference between a reseller and a CSP? If you do not have access to this TCR account, you are most likely a reseller. The difference between the two is that a reseller cannot transfer your campaigns to a different provider. So if you are wanting to transfer from Twilio to Telenex or from Telenex to Infobip to Bandwidth, whatever the case may be, if you are a CSP, you can use what's called the CSP migration tool to migrate your campaigns from one provider to another. If you are a reseller, meaning you submit your campaigns on their website, I know, for example, Twilio, I'll just say it, Twilio, they generally have you submit your campaigns through their portal. You are acting as a reseller, not as a CSP. Therefore, you cannot transfer that traffic to another provider. Or, I mean, you can, but you would have to pay for re-registration fees. And so, again, we talk a lot about in the first webinar how you can make sure that you become a CSP if you would like to become a CSP. If you're just submitting a single campaign and you're sending traffic on that network and you're not necessarily worried about owning the process, then you can totally ignore this part. But I just want to be as forthcoming as possible and explain all of the nuances that go into this ecosystem, because the messaging ecosystem, frankly, can be pretty confusing. And so, okay, so we're on the TCR portal. If you are using a messaging provider as a reseller or even as a CSP, but you're submitting it through their portal, it's going to look a little bit different. But if you are submitting it directly through TCR, this is what it's going to look like. Regardless, the same sort of fields are going to be on here. So again, the first thing you're going to want to do is put in your legal company name. So I'm going to put in our company name here. You're going to put in the type of organization. Ours is a private company for now. Eventually we want to be publicly traded, but right now we are a private company. Our country of registration is the United States. Here is where you would put in your tax information, or EIN. So your address would go here. The only reason that I'm not putting this in here is because I don't want someone else to take this information and then go and register as my company on TCR and send out some bad messages. That is the risk of letting your EIN get out there, especially in the messaging ecosystem. And so your provider, when they ask for your EIN, make sure you give it to them. They're enabling you to send traffic. I just don't want to put it in here and give it to the whole world. So I just wanted to preface that. So corporate address, you're going to put in here whatever your corporate address shows in your tax filings. Just make sure that you are putting it in the same way. So I have West here. If it's abbreviated on my tax filings, I'm just going to put a W here. Again, these computer systems are highly intelligent. They're very smart. Sometimes they can not necessarily understand that West and W are the same thing. There can be a little bit of a glitch there. So just make sure that you make it look exactly like it is on your tax forms. The next thing, vertical type, just grab one that makes the most sense. I'm putting information technology. State is Ohio for us. Website on or online presence, I'm going to put my website here. And then we will go ahead and go to the next page. I'm just going to put on just some, okay, so I'm just going to put in some zeros there so that I'm able to move on to the next one. Please don't do that in your own submission. Please make sure that you are actually putting in the right information. So brand relationship, you can fill this out really however you want. If you are a new company, you can put that there. I always just put Medium account for mine. So, I mean, it is just kind of whatever is applicable for you there. Then put the support email address. For us, that's going to be support@signalhouse.io. And then you can put your support phone number there as well. Once you do, you're going to be prompted to just submit this, and then the brand submission is done. And like I said, it's relatively instant. So pretty soon you will have your verification or verified notice. And so now let's transition into campaigns. Campaigns are going to be a significantly larger topic of conversation of this webinar, because campaigns, there's a lot as it relates to campaigns. So the number one question I want to answer before we dig into campaigns is who actually reviews the campaigns. So let's review the process again. The campaign registry is this organization that oversees all of the brand and registration process as part of the 10DLC registration process. However, they do not review your campaigns. A direct connect aggregator, or DCA, that your messaging provider partners with is actually the organization who is going to review your campaigns. There are 3 or 4 of them in the United States, depending on who you ask. I'll go with 4 for this, for the sake of this, and I'll tell you exactly who they are. So the first one is Cineverse. Cineverse has been around for a very long time. They used to have the highest volume of traffic. Not so much anymore, but they still have a massive amount of 10DLC volume. You have Cinch. Cinch is another massive provider. So they're another one. They have a ton of traffic on them. You have Infobip. Infobip is a Croatian company that's a little bit newer in the United States, but they do have a direct connect based on their acquisition of a company called Open Market. And they also have some pretty cool stuff as part of them as well as a DCA. And then you have a company called Vibes. Vibes is a little bit more under the radar. I don't necessarily hear about them as much, but they are another DCA in the US. And so, regardless of who your messaging provider is, your messaging provider will need to what we call make a hop to a DCA. And so when you are selecting in your CSP in the campaign submission process, when you're selecting a CNP, another acronym I know, which is a connectivity partner, that is your upstream provider. So if you were a Signal House customer, you'd put Signal House, Telenex, Bandwidth, Twilio, etc. When you send your campaign to them, they are essentially passing that campaign through to the Direct Connect aggregator. Now, one thing we talked about in our last webinar on message deliverability is that it's important that your messaging provider that you're using has a limited amount of jumps between themselves and the carriers, or between them and a DCA, because that handoff process, there might be additional reviews that happen there. Your messaging provider may have their own internal vetting process, and you could essentially have 3 to 5 different organizations that say you have to have this on your campaigns, you have to have that on your campaigns. If you've seen a DCA2 rejection, it means that your messaging provider is actually sending it to 2 levels of DCA. So it might go through one DCA and then go to another DCA for an additional layer of review before it actually gets to the carriers. So it can be a little bit of a convoluted process. And also, a lot of companies obfuscate the process. So they don't necessarily want you to know the secret sauce of what they're doing, who's reviewing what, how they're reviewing it, what the standards are, really all of these different sorts of items. But in general, those DCAs are going to review them, and they largely, not 100%, but they largely all have very similar requirements that they make you do. Now, your messaging provider is going to articulate those to you directly. We at Signal House, one thing that we do is we have our own internal review process where we let you know. We're going to work with you at the beginning. This is our Know Your Customer, or KYC, that we do at the outset to understand your business, understand the types of messaging that you're actually going to be sending, and the types of campaigns that you're going to be registering, so we can put you in the best position to actually get approvals. We're also going to review those internally before we send them to the next layer of review, because we want to make sure anything that we send gets an automated thumbs up and approval to make the process as seamless as possible. Other providers do that as well. Some providers just send you directly to the DCA. Now, one thing to note about providers that send you directly to the DCA, and so this would be you submit your campaign and you see DCA rejection. So each time a DCA rejects your campaign, you have to spend a vetting fee to re-vet that campaign, to have them look at that campaign again. So if I am looking for a new provider, or if I'm even working with an aggregator now that I'm happy with, I'm still asking them, do you review these campaigns before you send them upstream, or do you just send them upstream? Because if you just send them upstream, you could be costing me a lot of money sending a campaign out that you actually know is not going to get approved, because you have a better understanding as the messaging provider than I do as the end user. So I would ask these questions. Ask your provider, do you do an internal review? Is that review up to the standards of the aggregator, of the Direct Connect aggregator that you're actually working with? If not, how can we make sure that we are on the same page so that I'm not seeing rejections and not paying additional cost to have my campaigns reviewed multiple times? So, okay, so all of that being said, let's dig into the necessary components for 10DLC approval. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to pop over to the campaign section here of the campaign registry. Okay, so the first thing that you have to do when you are selecting a campaign, or sorry, creating a campaign, is to select a brand. So anytime that you go through the 10DLC process, you're going to have one brand. Again, a brand is essentially a company. So one brand and at least one campaign. So you can have more than one campaign underneath a single brand, but to have a campaign, you have to first have an approved brand. So I'm just going to select a brand here. Type brand name. I'm just going to type in Signal House, just grab one of these brands, and then it's going to show you the available use cases. So let's dig into these use cases a little bit. I already told you that there's a $15 one-time vetting fee. Now, there's also going to be a recurring monthly fee. That monthly fee is going to change depending on the type of campaign that you're getting. So let's stick on this left-hand column first. These are going to be our standard campaign types. 99% of you are all going to use standard campaign types. These are the ones that I process every single day. I've processed thousands, almost 10,000 campaigns at this point. I have personally processed or overseen the processing of. 99% of them have all been these standard campaign types. So any of these that are $10, so let's just look at these top ones before we get to low volume mixed. All of these are going to give you the same amount of throughput for each of these types. The only thing that is different is the type of messaging that you're actually going to be sending. So if all you're using this campaign for, and excuse the cattail that you can see here, we have a new kitten that likes to climb on everything. So what you can't see is that I have a cat that is right here on the left-hand side of my monitor trying to climb onto the tree that I have over here. So it's wonderful. But we are live on a webinar, so there's nothing that we can do about it. But okay. So if all you're sending out is 2FA codes, OTPs, one-time passwords, as it's generally called in the space, then you're going to want to use this. Account notifications. Your message was successfully delivered to this customer. This campaign successfully was approved. Those types of notifications, you're going to want to use this. If it's customer support related, if instead of doing customer support via Zendesk, Intercom, or one of those types of systems on your website, you want to text them and you want to say, if you need any help, just text me. We can have a conversation about it. We can jump on a call. It's going to be customer care. Delivery notifications, again, this is kind of self-explanatory. Fraud alert, self-explanatory. Now, this is the one that I want to dig in with you on. So low volume mixed. So all of these other campaigns that are $10 for a monthly fee, they're going to give you 2,000 T-Mobile segments each day, and they're going to give you an unlimited number of relatively unlimited number of AT&T messages per day. It's just going to limit how many messages you can send per minute. So it's going to start out with 240 messages per minute that are text messages and a little bit less than that for multimedia messages or MMS messages. So again, that's 2,000 T-Mobile, and it is a certain number of AT&T messages, 240 text messages per minute. Now, when we get into the low volume mixed, this is a great option for anyone sending between or sending under 6,000 messages per day. So for a lot of the small businesses that are on this call listening or that are watching the VOD on YouTube, this is going to be what you want. You want to use low volume mixed. And so I push this so heavily for two reasons. One, because it's only $1.50 a month. It's only $1.50 to have this campaign set up. You're going to be buying a phone number that's going to run you probably around $1 a month, depending on who your messaging provider is. And you're going to be sending text messages out that are anywhere between 001, so 0.001, 0.007, I know is what Twilio charges. So depending on who your messaging provider is, you're going to be all in each month for, if you send 100 messages, just a few dollars. And those 100 messages could lead to conversions. There's a really great ROI behind that type of messaging. What else it's going to offer you is it's going to offer you a mixed use case. So in our last webinar, we talked when we talked a lot about message deliverability, we talked about this concept of drift content. So for example, if I have a 2FA campaign, so this is only supposed to be sending out text messages for one-time passwords or to put in a code for a 2FA notification, and I start marketing to customers, hey, you should see this new product that Signal House just launched or that Company A just launched or ABC Trucking just launched, they could shut your campaign down. They could filter those messages or even shut down, deactivate, suspend that campaign because your content is drifting away from your use case. And so this is where in our last webinar, we said that it's really, really important to have a very frank conversation with your aggregator to determine if they are doing active monitoring for drift content, what that active monitoring really is, and how to make sure that your support, this is the biggest one for me that I generally see, is how you determine when your customer care or support messaging drifts into marketing. This is why I always recommend if you're sending less than 6,000 messages per day, you use this low volume mixed so that you can choose a customer care, an account notification, and a marketing campaign type or a campaign use case. So, okay, so let's just say for the sake of this, we are going to go low volume mixed. We're customer care. we are marketing, and we are also account notification. Let's just do all of these. We are going to click next. And then on this next screen, this is really helpful. Your messaging provider, if you are reselling or if you're just going with like another provider that you're inserting it on their own individual portal, they may or may not show you. This is going to show you what your throughput limits are for this messaging type. So remember that I told you earlier that on a standard campaign, on one of these $10 monthly campaigns, you're going to have 240 SMS messages per day, or sorry, messages per minute with AT&T. Now we see that this is 75. Why is that? Well, it's because we chose this low volume campaign. And we do see this 2,000 a day. If you are not sending high volume messaging, this is the one caveat from what I said earlier. If you're not sending high volumes of messaging, but you need all of your messages to get delivered at one time, so it's a notification that everyone needs to get at once, the low volume, even if you're not sending that high of traffic, it's probably not going to be the best for you because of the 75 messages per minute. So instead, maybe I want to select a mixed campaign. So this is going to be a full mixed campaign. So I don't have those same throughput limits, but I'm going to keep customer care, marketing, and account notification. Now look, 240, 150 for MMS, and this brand cap of 2000. There is a way for you to get that brand cap of 2000 higher. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So now I'm going to see this screen here, and I'm going to have to answer a couple questions. The way that and I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. The way that I describe this is the who, what, when, where, how, and cost. So the things that you're going to have to answer on your website and in your campaign call to action or message flow. So in the campaign registry, this is going to be this section here. So your call to action message flow, what you're going to have to answer is you're going to have to answer who. So the company name. You are consenting to receive messaging from company A, company B, Signal House, etc. What type of messages? Customer care, marketing, account notification, etc. When, the message frequency. So we generally say message frequency may vary, but you need to have that information as well. So where can I find that privacy policy link? Link it here if possible. So linking it within the actual campaign notification, or sorry, the campaign message flow, you'll want to add that in there. How do I opt out? How do I get help? I can respond stop for help, help for help, or sorry, stop to stop, help for help, etc. And then the cost is the final thing. So you need a message in there that says message and data rates may apply. And so let me go ahead and queue up a campaign that I already have that is fully DCA elected. So this is one of our internal test campaigns. As we can see, it is a mixed use campaign for customer care and marketing. So we practice what we preach there. We can see that this campaign has fully been DCA elected. We can see its status here and everything else. And I'm going to show you what we have submitted here for the call to action, message flow, and the description. So on the description, we are just going to be providing some information about who we are as a company. So we are Signal House. We're a sales and marketing company, provides customer support and informs companies about new services that are offered. The key here for this description is that it is descriptive. It accurately describes your company, but it's also broad. You don't need to say, in particular, this is exactly what we do, because again, you want to provide it to be broad enough to where you can have this same campaign and the same brand apply to you as you grow and change as a company. So on our call to action and message flow, the one thing that I think is really important to point out is that if you are going to use a mixed campaign, and again, we are big fans of the mixed campaign, you're going to have an individual message flow for each of the different types of messaging that you are sending. So here we have all the components, the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the cost. We have put all of that in here. I won't read this blurb to you directly. Essentially, what we're doing is we are repasting in the website information that we have. So we're going to get to the website review here in a moment. The key here first, though, is our submission. So we'll pause on this for a second. Essentially, if you want to read specifically what's in here and replicate it for your own company, absolutely do that. Not a problem at all. We have gotten approval on Cinch and on Infobip for this in particular. And a very similar one for Cineverse in the past as well. So you are able to use this as a template for yourselves. But essentially, we will get back to this in a moment. I just want to go over some of the other sort of key components here. And we'll start with the sample messages. So let's say that I am doing a marketing and a customer care campaign, which is what this one is. When I am writing sample messages, these sample messages need to at least one sample message per use case. So here, marketing, this is very simply the marketing message, new release. We're marketing that to our customers. We also have one here for customer support, just in case someone has a customer support issue. Now, up here on the subscriber opt-in and kind of all of these different components, the key here is that you are putting the name of your company in each of these. So on the opt-in message, you have to make sure that you have your company. You also have to make sure that you put in that the customer has opted in and the type of messaging to receive marketing and customer support. So that fits both of our use cases, marketing and customer support. On the opt-out message, same thing. We are saying that you've successfully unsubscribed. The key here is to put no further messages will be sent. So I see a lot of rejections for that. People not putting in no further messages will be sent. And then let them know how they can opt back in. Sometimes they might opt out for a day and they want to opt back in. They can respond start to opt back in. They can respond anything that you have as a keyword here. So we have start here. You can do the same thing on yours. And you can also register different keywords. Let's say instead of stop to opt out, you want it to be no is how you opt out, or whatever the case may be. You can register those different keywords. The one thing to point out is that you cannot put start as you can't put stop as the opt-in keyword and start as the opt-out keyword. It can't be confusing to the end user. I think that that's pretty self-explanatory, but it is important to point that out. Now, this final one, help. So when you have help here, they have to have a couple components. So you need to make sure that you put in the website here that the individual can actually go for more assistance. You also can put the phone number here that is your support phone number and a support email. You have to have one of those. So you have to have another method of contacting support if you need help. You can either put a phone number or an email. We put both here just to be safe. But you only need to put one in there. So you need to put in here how they can opt out, stop to opt out, and how they can restart messages again. So we'll have a cheat sheet for all of this that you can copy and paste and everything else that is easy for you. So we'll have that as a addendum, or essentially as an attachment to this webinar that you'll be able to download as your own PDF. But that is important for the help message. Now, these other ones are somewhat self-explanatory. The key on an embedded link here is if you do put yes, you need to put at least one link in here that is an embedded link. I always use, if there's more than one embedded link that you're going to send, I sometimes use sample messages for that. So if I know, for example, I'm going to point people to a public Notion board, I am going to put that Notion board as a sample message. It can just be an exact message that you've used a link in the past. Put that there's a sample message. Another cheat for this, if you do get a message filtered by the carriers, they block your message because there's a link in there. I usually just take that direct link and create that as a sample message here as well. So that's just another quick hack of mine. And I think that pretty well covers what we have on this sheet. So we'll go ahead and stop sharing. And then we will dig into the nitty-gritty of the website components. The key, of course, to remember is when you are creating your CTA in your message flow on the campaign registry, the number one thing that you have to have, or the number one selection of items that you have to have: who, what, when, where, how, and cost. Who, the company name; what type of messaging; when, message frequency; where can I find the privacy policy link; how do I stop messages; how do I get help if I need help; and the cost. So message and data rates may apply. Okay, So let's dig into the two things that they're going to be reviewing on your website. So we've submitted our campaign, we have submitted our brand. All of that is now pending with the DCA. What are they actually going to review? So they are going to review all of the information that you've submitted so far on the campaign registry. They're going to review each of those components, make sure that everything lines up and everything is good to go as you have submitted it. Now, they're also going to review your website. During your website review, they're going to be looking broadly at two different areas. The first area is your call to action, how someone actually can subscribe to opt into your messaging. The other component is going to be your privacy policy. So, as an example, let me just share my screen again, and I am going to show you the Signal House website. So here on our Signal House website, you are able to dig into the two items that are the most important to review when they are reviewing your submission. So number one is going to be your CTA. This is where someone can actually put in their information to learn more and to put in a phone number. So the key here is anywhere that a customer can put in a phone number on your website. And so and before I say this, let me just preface, there are two massive things that you need to take away from this webinar as it relates to website review. The number one thing on the CTA is that anywhere a customer can put in a phone number, you need to have these disclaimers anywhere. And so this is a common misconception or a common roadblock that I see when people are going through this 10DLC approval process is that they will have this information on their custom demo request or on their apply function or on their get in contact us, but they won't have it in every single one. So if you have a contact us form, it needs to be there. If you have a get a demo, it has to be there. If you have a application, has to be there. If you have a get in touch, if you'd like to learn more, it has to be there. So it can't just be on one, it needs to be on every single one on your website. If a DCA can find a place for a customer to enter in a phone number and you don't have a disclaimer, they're going to reject you. Now, the other thing, when you are filling out your CTA, let me just zoom in on this. You'll notice here that I have two. One of these is going to be for customer support. One of these is going to be marketing because those are the two different kinds of messaging that I'm sending. If it was only marketing, I would only put this one. If it was only customer support, I would only put this one. However, we have a dual use case for our campaign. So for this landing page or for this means of opting in, I am having both of these on here. And I'm going to be answering the who, what, when, where, how, and cost on these forms as well. So I first have the who. I'm saying that you are getting contacted by Signal House LLC. So I also have the what. This is for account issues and outages. And I even put it directly here. It's for customer care. I put the when, that the message frequency will vary. I put the cost here. Message data rates will apply. I put the how can I opt out, the stop, the help for help, and then for privacy policy. So essentially, where can I find that privacy policy? We are saying that it is on the bottom of the page. Honestly, best practice is to actually just link it right here. We have it directly on the bottom of the page, and it is on the bottom of the page, so we are able to get this approved. So the same thing is going to be for the marketing one, and we're essentially going to restate everything we've stated up here, except we're going to tailor it specifically for marketing. So we see that we have the marketing tag here. We also say new offers. So, but we have the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the cost. So we have all of those in this one as well. The other thing, this is somewhat new, is that it can't be a forced opt-in. So we cannot put the person's information in here and then have them not be able to submit the request. They should be able to submit the request regardless of if they selected these boxes or not. Now, if they've selected these boxes, they are giving you affirmative consent that you are able to contact them about the different items that you've listed here, which is great. That's what you want. But they should be able to submit this form without you marking this box. Now, this is not something that every DCA is going to be looking for. but it is best practice, and I want to arm you with everything that you need to get immediate approvals and constant approvals. So just note, they should be able to submit this without checking these boxes. So, okay, so that's really it on the CTA. You just have to have the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the cost. If you have all of that in here and they don't have to check the box to be able to submit the request, then your CTA is good to go. That's it. Box is checked. The other thing is going to be your privacy policy. So, a disclaimer before we get in here, I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. Please contact your own internal compliance and legal departments to learn best how they want you to handle this disclosure. However, the DCAs, when they're looking at this, they are looking for essentially two different things. So the first thing that they are looking for is a statement that says, we do not share or sell data to any third parties, period. That's it. Now, that's a lot to ask because a lot of companies do share and sell data to third parties. And that is obviously a business use case that is totally legal and totally fine. And so the DCAs have enabled you to provide an additional statement in there if you do share and sell data for to third parties. You are able to specify that SMS opt-in data, so the text opt-in information, SMS opt-in data will not be shared or sold to third parties for marketing and promotional purposes. So that statement, if you do share and sell generally as part of your business practices, you should be able to put that statement in there that you do not share or sell SMS opt-in consent to third parties for marketing and promotional purposes. So put that in, make it very clear, and then restate the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the cost in there as well. So we have this SMS disclaimer. If you want to copy and paste this directly, obviously changing who your company is and kind of what you do. But basically just putting that message frequency may vary. You're getting contacted by Signal House. Message and database may apply. You can reply stop to opt out, help for help, etc. All those things that we've already covered. Put that in your SMS disclaimer. Put in a statement that says we do not share or sell data to third parties for marketing and promotional purposes, or that SMS opt-in data is not being shared or sold to third parties. So this is the statement that you can put in here. If you want to put that overt statement, if you want to put the caveat that it's SMS opt-in, whatever the case may be, this is information that you can use. Again, we'll have a cheat sheet that you can copy and paste and use this within your submissions. Okay, so we have covered a lot, and we still have quite a few questions that we would love to get through. So I am going to transition into the question and answer side of things. I'm just looking kind of at my notes here, seeing if there's anything else I want to cover, but I think we have covered everything. Actually, real quick, before we go into the question and answer section, I want to talk directly to resellers for a moment. I know we have a couple of resellers on the call here today, and I want to talk to you guys for a moment. And that is this concept of templating. So a lot of people now will template their submissions on the CSP or the campaign service provider portal on the campaign registry, or even with their upstream providers if they are a reseller. A lot of them will try to template out the same website, the same submissions, everything else. So can you template? Should you do it? When should you do it? How should you do it? What does that look like? So the short answer is yes, templating is definitely something that you can do, and it's also somewhat recommended depending on your use case. But the number one thing is this, is that if you want to create a template landing page or a template site that all of your customers can use, as well as a templated submission that is perfect for all of your customers, the number one thing that I would have you do is reach out to your messaging provider. Have these frank conversations with your messaging provider or your messaging aggregator, because you're going to have to be ready to defend the use of templating. So we ourselves help our customers template their submissions because we want it to be easier for CRM systems to be able to use 10DLC and to offer 10DLC to their customers, but not everyone sees this in the same light that we do. Some people see templating as a way to essentially enable fraud or enable scams or enable bad actors to get approved quickly. So the number one thing that I would have you do is have a frank conversation with your aggregator and be prepared to answer why you are templating. Help your provider help you by doing a deep dive into who your customers are. So this is a part of that KYC or know your customer that we've talked about several times. Make sure that your aggregator knows you. If they're not doing the work to actually go through and understand your business and your use case, make sure that you carve that out with them directly. Be aggressive on it. Email your exec, your account exec, email your rep, email anyone that you have at that company and say, I want to sit down. I want you to understand my business because I want to ensure that when I'm templating things out or even just sending campaigns upstream, that they are going to be reviewed by people who know who we are and they're thinking about our business as they decide whether or not it's going to be approved. I guarantee you that is the number one thing that is going to help you accelerate your approvals is if you sit down and have an open, frank conversation with your messaging provider or aggregator about the types of messaging that you're sending, who you're sending it to, who your customers are, if you're reselling it, who your customers that are reselling that messaging are, and how they're actually using your platform. So templating is a wonderful solution. I am a big fan of templating. I think anything that makes the process easier for the end user to submit and be able to use this channel for their business is a really good thing. However, there are bad actors that are trying to slip through the cracks. So it is on you as the customer to show your aggregator and provider while your templating approach is a benefit to the ecosystem and it's not obviously to damage it. And if you have any questions about templating, what kind of templates work, what kind of templates don't work, is this going to get approved? Is this not going to get approved? Shoot me a message, will@signalhouse.io. I will be happy to take a look at it. I have set up a couple different templating systems in the past to make quick approvals. And again, it's something that we also do here at Signal House. And so I will absolutely be able to answer your questions. Anything that you have on that, absolutely. So, okay, let's transition now. We have quite a few questions that we want to get through. And so let me actually just take a quick sip of water here and then we'll dig in. Okay, so Michael says, my company sends a few thousand messages per month. We have a standard campaign now. I saw something about low volumes, and of course, we also did talk about low volumes here. Would you recommend a low volume campaign? Yes, I would. If you're only sending a few thousand messages per month, and those messages don't all need to be delivered right now, basically if the difference between the AT&T throughput, which is 75 messages per minute versus 240 messages per minute, if that difference in throughput is not necessarily important to you, yes, 100% go low volume mixed. Because if you go low volume mixed, you don't have drift content for having your customer care transition into marketing messages, assuming customers have consented to both of those channels from you. And also, it's going to save you money. It's going to save you $8.50 per campaign. So if you yourself are a reseller and you have 1,000 campaigns that you're reselling and your audience is only, or your customers rather, are only sending a total of a couple thousand messages per month as a customer, then you are essentially wasting $8.50 per customer. They don't need that. Go low volume mixed. And if you are just a single one-off account that is themselves wanting to send messages and you're low volume, please use a low volume campaign. I want to save you money, and I also don't want to see your messages filtered unintentionally because of drift content. Okay, so Stephanie asked, my company is a reseller of SMS and our customers have issues getting registered. How can we make this process easier? So what we just talked about before we transition into Q&As, templating. Templating is going to be the key here. Have a conversation with your aggregator. Say, these are who we resell to, and these are the people that they are communicating with directly. So this is essentially B2B2C. You're selling to businesses who themselves are communicating with customers. Walk them through what that flow is like, what kind of messages are being sent, what the use case is, and examples of messages, and then work with them on creating a templated approach for this. So your CTAs and your message flow for your campaigns, that can be the same for every company. You can replace the company name. You can replace the privacy policy link. You can have these as essentially data tags or merge tags that can pull data in from your database as a reseller. So you can change all those company names to be the appropriate company name. The two things that I would ask you to do to make this process easier on your messaging provider is I would ask you to collect the privacy policy link up front and also collect this CTA link. So the link where a person actually opts into messaging. So that was the Get Demo link on our website. Other companies have it on the Contact Us page. Collect that information up front so that you can embed that in your campaign submission. Now, if you want to template websites, I think that that is absolutely something that you could do as well to make that process easier. Just make sure that your websites have the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the cost that we've already talked about. The where the person is actually consenting to receiving messaging is consistent and has all of those components that are essential for the campaign to actually get approved. And then work with your aggregator. Send the template to your messaging provider and say, is this something that you would approve? Yes, no. If no, why? Okay. So Ethan says we're unable to update our website. Is there a way that we can get registered? And so Ethan, this is a really good question, and this is something that a lot of SMBs struggle with. And so in this situation or in this market where we have a lot of historic websites that maybe you don't even have the password for anymore, or it's a Wix site you set it up a long time ago, or you hired someone to set it up, it's going to be costly for you to go through that process again. We totally understand that. This is a situation where if I was a customer myself looking for the ability to send 10DLC traffic, I would actually seek out a messaging provider that does do some kind of templating. So when I'm in the demo process, when I'm talking to these different providers, I'm asking them, do you have an approach for templating websites? I cannot do it myself. I don't necessarily want to hire someone to build myself a 10DLC website. Is there any templating that you guys do? Is there any way that you can help provide me on my own website or connect me with some kind of agency that's able to create that pretty seamlessly on their end? So the answer is absolutely yes. There are different providers out there that will help you. My company is one of them. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to provide you with information. My company is one of them. If you want to reach out, please do. Otherwise, totally cool. But ask these questions of your aggregators. Make sure that they can service you regardless of where you're at in the stage of your company, in the stage of your business, as far as your digital approach, and also just how large you are as a company. So, yeah, it's definitely possible. Okay, so moving on to Arif. Arif asks a really good question. My Twilio campaigns got rejected from DCA2. How many DCAs could there be in this chain of DCAs? Meaning, am I able to get approved after DCA2 or is there a DCA3? So it's a really good question, Arif. We saw the same thing. I'm a past Twilio customer myself before starting my own messaging provider. So I have a lot of experience with getting 10DLC campaigns approved on Twilio's system. So Twilio, to my understanding, this could be a little bit different today. Before I did used to see DCA1 and DCA2 as rejections. The way that I understood it was DCA1 was their own internal review, and then DCA2 was the actual DCA. So what's interesting is that Twilio uses Cineverse as a DCA, and Cineverse themselves uses another hop in their DCA approval process. So what's kind of interesting is that when your campaign is getting approved through Twilio, if they do still have their own internal DCA1, it is actually possible for this to go to 3 DCAs. Now, it really is 2 DCAs. It is Cineverse and the DCA that they're funneling traffic through as the additional DCA. But Twilio is telling you DCA1 is their own internal review, so theoretically they're 3. But in general, the most that I see DCAs going through are going to be 2. I personally only want to use channels where I'm sending it through 1 DCA, but that's just me. In general, though, yeah, if your messages, or sorry, if your campaigns are getting rejected at DCA 1, 2, 3, whatever the case may be, the best thing that you can do is reach out to your account manager and say, what do I have to do to get these campaigns approved? What do my customers have to do to get these campaigns approved? Is there any way for me to sit down? And I'm always going to recommend this. Is there any way for me to sit down, show you who my customers are, show you the use case, show you who they're sending messages to? How can I make you feel more comfortable approving this? And what can I do to make sure that the process is seamless? Now, granted, as a messaging provider, it really should be your messaging provider that should have these conversations with you if they're seeing that your campaigns are getting rejected, because it's ultimately their business is to make your business, is to fuel your business through messaging. But if they're not doing that, and it sounds like they're not in this case, I would go to your Twilio reps and I would say, listen, let's carve out a use case. Let me educate you on who my customers are, what my business is, and let's move forward and make sure that we're in a good spot as a collective group, so that we're having really proactive approvals. So Matt says, "Can you break down the charges for me? I see some charges below $5, some 15, some are recurring. It's super confusing." And yeah, I absolutely can. And so there are a couple different sets of charges as it relates to the 10 DLC approval process. The first one's going to be in the brand. So your brand is going to be a $4 charge. This is a one-time fee. The only time you have to pay this fee is when you're doing an initial review of that brand or when the brand needs to be revetted or reapproved. So essentially what that means is that that $4 fee, if your brand gets approved on the first try and you don't have to update the EIN, you don't have to update the legal business name, you're only going to pay $4 one time for that brand. But let's say you accidentally put in the wrong EIN, or it gets rejected for some other reason and it's unverified, it's going to be another $4 charge to get that reviewed again. Now, if you do have to end up changing the EIN at some point, you have to change the legal business name and it's verified, it will go to an unverified state and then have to get re-verified. So again, you're paying that charge one more time. But in general, I usually see people paying this one time, assuming they have the correct information. So again, that's why it's important to have the correct information because each failure is going to cost you money and we don't want to cost you money. The other charges that you're seeing, you're going to have a one-time $15 vetting fee for your campaign. So whether it's a low volume campaign, whether it's a standard campaign, you're going to have a one-time $15 charge, assuming it's a standard campaign, meaning it's a standard use case. The recurring charges are going to be for the type of campaign. So if it is a standard campaign, meaning you get 2,000 SMS segments per day with T-Mobile, 240 per minute with AT&T, that is going to be a full $10 monthly charge. Now, if you go a low volume campaign where it's going to be that 75 messages per minute with AT&T and a cap of 2,000 per day on T-Mobile and a cap of 6,000 per day total for SMS segments or messages, then it's going to be $1.50 a month. So that's why it's so important. If you are not sending a ton of volume, just go low volume. It's going to be better for you anyway. It's going to be cheaper, and you don't have to worry about spending additional money because it's going to be the same experience for you. Those are going to be essentially the charges, though. Those are going to be all the charges that you should see. If you are seeing any charges outside of that, shoot me an email. I'll take a look and I'll try to help you decode what those are. All right, Paula, great question. Says, are there tiers of campaigns that can send more messages? Is this an additional review? How much does that cost? So we've talked about low volume, we've talked about standard, but there is this concept of going through additional vetting. So there's standard vetting and there's also enhanced vetting. So I don't want to confuse anyone. So this is an additional step that you can choose to do, but it is not required to increase your segment count through through this additional vetting process. So when you go through additional vetting, what they're doing is they are taking a look at your business information in a more in-depth lens. And so this is a $40 charge. This is just a pass-through charge. This is what it actually costs from the campaign registry to do this additional vetting. But your throughput can actually increase pretty substantially depending on the score that you get. So you get a score that's between 1 and 100. If you get at least I believe 24, your SMS segments will increase. The first one that increases is going to be T-Mobile. It's going to increase from 2,000 segments a day up to 10,000 segments a day on that lowest improvement. This can go all the way up if you get above, I believe, a 74. You can have 200,000 segments a day for T-Mobile. And then the same thing goes for AT&T. You can get that throughput all the way up to 4,500 messages per minute. So if you're sending very high volumes and 10DLC is the channel of choice for you, you absolutely can do that. You just have to go through standard vetting. I recommend going through standard vetting once every 6 to 12 months. And the reason why is because the number one thing that they're looking at is the age of your business and how many employees that you have. So as your business naturally gets older, it gets more established, you hire more people, assuming you're hiring more people and growing, your score is going to improve. Now, there's other things that they're looking at as well. They're ensuring that that address is going to match up to the company information that they have in the government databases. This is done sort of lightly during the brand approval process, but this is a much stricter review. So they're really looking at the website. They're looking at make sure those phone numbers that you've entered as a support phone number actually exist. They're doing all of that work to make sure that you actually are who you say you are and that you should be able to send out significantly higher volumes on the 10DLC channel. They're also going to be looking at lawsuits. They're going to be looking at business reputation. They're going to be looking at essentially, do you have any spam complaints in the past or Better Business Bureau sort of things? So those all play a role as well. But the two things that they're looking at more than anything else are the age of the company and the number of employees that you have. Okay, Tyler, what is number pooling? I always put no, but I'm not really sure what it is. It's a good question. So it's not something, let me pull up the brand, just adding a brand here. Or actually, let me just pull up one of the campaigns that I have already submitted, and I'll just kind of show you. All right, so I have marked no here for number pooling. So and this is a really good question. It's something that I should have touched on. And so, number pooling is essentially if you need more than 49 numbers on a single campaign, you have to apply for number pooling. Now, there's a whole process that has to take place for this number pooling, and it's not a cheap process. It's pretty expensive. They do an additional review of your use case, additional review of your company. You have to have essentially a carve out, especially from T-Mobile and some of these other carriers, that you should be able to add more than 49 numbers on a single campaign. In my experience, it's not really worth it. If you get to that 49 number maximum, I would just register a new campaign. Um, that's sort of yeah, I mean it's as easy as that. I would just register a new campaign. The one caveat there, your T-Mobile message segments are going to be at the brand level, so that is tied by your EIN or your tax ID. So each time that you register a new campaign, you're going to be sharing that same number of T-Mobile segments for that brand. AT&T, on the other hand, the messages per minute, that's going to be at the campaign level. So essentially, you would be able to have 49 on one, 49 on another. You would have at a standard campaign with no additional vetting, you have 240 messages per minute on each campaign for AT&T, and you would have a pool of 2,000 segments in total for those campaigns. So I hope that's not too confusing. But the short answer is that number pooling generally not worth it, or it's for very specific circumstances where you would actually want to go through that effort to do that versus just creating a new campaign. Okay, so Laura says, I'm really hoping that you can help. Hey, Laura, I also hope that I can help. My brand keeps getting rejected for my company and it's brand new. Is it possibly because it's new? I want to start messaging, but I'm not sure what to do. Laura, the answer to your question is yes. It actually most likely is because your company is new. And so basically, when these reviews happen, they are matching up that information in a government database. These government databases are not always fully up to date. So what happens is that your new company could take anywhere from 30 days to 6 months for it to actually show up in that database. And so because of that, your brand could get rejected in the meantime because it's not able to verify it. Now, there is a way to appeal this. So there is an appeal process. I believe it's a $10 charge for an appeal. I would always just send in your W-9, your SS-4, any kind of documentation that shows your legal business name and your EIN on one document. And I say W-9 or SS-4 because it needs to be a legal document. You can't just write down on a piece of paper your EIN and your legal name and submit that. So long as you have IRS documentation that says your EIN and your legal business name, this should be able to overcome and appeal that rejection. Okay, so couple more questions here, but we are running out of time. So we will try to answer as many as we can. Let me grab a good one. Nathan says, we have four salespeople on our team. Do you recommend we do one campaign for all four people or do one campaign per person? So, Nathan, this is a really good question. I would say it totally depends on the volume that you're doing. So, if each of these individuals is doing insanely high volumes, so you're messaging more than 2,000 individuals per day, or sending more than 2,000 text messages per day, having multiple campaigns could be valuable. I generally say that if you are doing normal sales, so just the normal back and forth, getting people that are signing up on the website, they want to learn more about your product. I think anywhere from 10 to 15 numbers per campaign, even on a standard campaign that doesn't have any additional vetting, or even a low volume mixed campaign. This is generally fine for most businesses unless you're doing, again, insanely high volumes. And if you're doing insanely high volumes, you may want to look at a short code unless the local presence that a 10DLC provides really is that attractive to you. And if that's the case, then yeah, I would do multiple campaigns or one campaign per person. But in general, you can fit 10 to 15 numbers with a normal volume sales motion, an outbound sales motion, and an inbound sales motion through text message perfectly fine on a standard or even a low volume mixed campaign. Okay. So Ryan asked, this will be the last question that we get to because we are at time. Ryan says, I'm a reseller. Do you recommend letting our customers configure their own branding campaign or submitting one on their behalf? A really good question, Ryan. On the brand side of things, you are going to need them to put in certain information. It's really difficult. There are certain websites that you can use that can give you the EIN of a company, but there's not a great way to verify that. And so what I mean by that is that so the IRS database, they don't let you just go in and grab data from that database or even subscribe to that database. So they lock that down pretty tightly. And so you're still gonna, I would recommend having your customers at least put in their legal business name, a DBA, the type of organization they are, all of those tax related information, the EIN, I would have them fill that information in on their own. Now, if you're a vertical solution, so you're a vertical reseller, yeah, I would absolutely template out your campaigns. I wouldn't have your customers even touch their campaigns. I would have your internal team submitting those campaigns on their behalf, templating those campaigns out to match that specific use case for their industry. And even if you are a horizontal company, you are going to be having different verticals that do use your platform probably more than others. You might have banking, you may have real estate, you may have auto detailers or whatever the case may be. I would just create specific use cases for each of those main buckets that are going to use your platform the most so that when they come in, they submit their brand information, it automatically creates a campaign on the back end. You already know that that campaign is going to be approved because you configured it while having really in-depth conversations with your aggregator to understand what they will accept and what they will not accept. Hopefully your aggregator has done that work for you, but if not, you've been aggressive in getting after them and doing it. And they have helped you make sure that that is going to get approved. So, yeah, there absolutely are ways that you can make it quicker. And I would certainly take steps away from the user to make it a more intuitive and seamless process. And so that more people can use the 10DLC channel because it is a very powerful channel that has incredible results. So that is all for today. Thank you all so much. As we leave today's webinar, I just want to make sure that I cover again the essential elements that you're going to need in that campaign submission. That is the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, and the cost. That is the number one thing that I see get rejected on campaigns is they are not calling out either the CTA on the website or the message flow, who the company name is, who the person sending the messages actually is, what type of company they are, when the messages are being sent, the message frequency, where I can find the privacy policy, how I can opt out, how I can get help, and the cost. So the message frequency may vary. So if you add that, you should be head and shoulders above other people in the space. So if you have any questions, as always, please reach out, will@signalhouse.io. This webinar will be up on our YouTube channel, and we will be going live next week with another super exciting topic. So hope everyone has a good rest of your day and a good weekend, and we will see you here next time.